So first, just for folks who maybe have been living under a rock for the past 20 years or so,
Mhm.
30 years or so, can you give it a little bit of intro about who you are, why we're sitting here talking today?
No doubt. Peace. My name is Bobbito Garcia, aka Cool Bob Love. And super, super, super amped to be partnering with Positive Deviance. Shout out to you, Michael Thomas, and to Marcel Rosasalas for everything that you do. I've been following. I've been put up on your events by two people who are like really influential about my knowledge of airborne sickness mitigation. Number one, my co-parent, and number two, Kyle from Clean Air Events on the West Coast. And ever since I started following, I was like, wow, like this is something that I want to be doing, and it's something that I had actually, our our jump offs are like right in line with each other. My first event with far UVC and mask required and open windows and all that was in August of 2025, which aligns right with you. So I felt like it was a natural and organic partnership to join forces and try to create something fresh for the people who are out there who are either caregivers or medically high risk community members, or people who are just on some preventative measures of wanting to avoid airborne sickness. And there's multiple uh, multiple viruses lingering in the air. There's measles, polio, was it RSV, COVID, flu, and probably others, and then COVID has continued to mutate, and there's cases of swine flu recently. There's the avian flu. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. So I'm blessed to be, in unison with Positive Deviance, especially at a time when I've been in isolation pretty much for the last 5 years, not doing any in-person events, and that's me, someone who has been to 48 countries, 49 countries and six continents, over a 37 plus year career. So I've just been laying low, until now. We have far UVC equipment and the Eden and the what is it, the all these tools that destroy pathogens immediately, and it makes me feel safe to be out amongst others, masked up, and not feeling like I'm going to bring sickness back to my home. My co-parent is immunocompromised and disabled. We can't afford to enter into this household and make the situation any worse. So that's the path that I'm on.
So can you take me back to around last summer when you were just starting to think about putting together some of these events? Talk a little bit about like what made you feel comfortable to bring folks together in Saulnier, the different types of protocols that you put in place there, and just generally what the vibe was like, how folks took it. What was that like? Can you bring us back to that scene?
So I dropped a memoir titled Bobbito's Book of Bebo Bong Bong, a memoir of sports style and soul, July 1st, 2025, published by Edge of Sports slash Akashic. And, there were independent mom and pop brick and mortar shops pining for me to do an in-store. And, I would go back and forth. Yo, thank you. I'm not doing any in-person appearances other than ones where masks are required. And not just required, but like N95 or KN95. And then they, would just be like, oh, all right, well, we'll get back to you. And so my brain started thinking like, okay, can't do any book signings. How am I going to promote this release? Right. So I'm doing everything virtual, Zooms, radio appearances, podcasts, interviews, IG reels, everything. And then I got to the point where I was like, all right, well, again, my co-parent, I got to bless her. Like, she's so knowledgeable about the airborne sickness conscious community, globally. And she was like, "Yo, there's a shop in Kingston, New York, where they require masks to, for everybody, and they don't allow anybody to eat inside." And I was like, "Oh wow, cool." So I knew another author that was in that area, Key, Born Free. They had just released a book as well, and I was like, "Yo, why don't we partner?" And the other thing was that they were one of the co-founders of COVID Safer Families, which is a homeschooling group in like Dutchess, Orange counties. We live in Rockland, but we would drive up, my child and I, to partake in the activities that they would program. And so we joined forces, and we did something at Blackbird Info Shop. And it was beautiful. And it was like 25, 27 attendees. Most of them were already from the COVID Safer Families group, so they were used to masking. And then like the 5 or 7 people who weren't were like, "Yo, like no problem." We provided the masks, they threw them on, and I was able to do a book signing and author talk in person, and that was the first public appearance I had done since July 4th, 2021. So it was like mind blowing to me, and I was like afterwards, I couldn't even contain my joy. It was like, wow, I'm in community with people who are mindful enough to care to not potentially spread sickness to others, right? And that was kind of like the starting point, and so after that, as the universe works, I was playing ball at Franklin and Nyack, and I'm shooting my jump shots and everything, and this woman walks by. She's walking a dog, and she recognizes a hoodie I had on because I have a clothing brand, and I just released it, and she had seen the post, and she was like, "Yo, nice hoodie," and I'm like, thinking like she's just telling me nice hoodie because she thinks it's a nice hoodie. I'm like, "Oh, thanks a lot." And she was like, "Oh, my brother used to listen to you on the radio, with Stretch. He used to make me record for him." And I was like, "Oh, cool." So we started yapping. Marcella Mazio is her name, and she was the proprietor behind Silent Air. So we just met magically, right? Hit it off. She wasn't someone who was part of the airborne sickness cautious community, but she was like, "Yo, do you want to do an event at my spot? Cool, let's rock." And so, boom, I did a book signing / listening session / clothing brand pop-up at Silent Air in Nyack in November. Then I did another one in January. Another one in February. Both of them, about 20 to 25 attendees throughout the night. Everybody masked. Nobody complained. Had to fix some people's masks because they weren't aware of how to wear it properly. But like everything worked out lovely, and it was like, wow, like now I'm back in the mix, and so it's like all these like smaller steps that are leading up to, the light bulb in my head because, Positive Deviance left a comment when I announced that I was doing a clean air event, shout out to Kyle, in New York. Y'all left a comment like, "Yo, that's dope, whatever." I'm thinking y'all don't know who I am, but you just like the idea that I'm doing, a mass required event. But turns out that, it's like, wow, like Positive Deviance is like true love for my legacy. And so once I started building with Michael and Marcel, it just felt like, wow, what synergy, what a blessing in the universe that I could build with people who are like-minded, conscious folks, intelligent, progressive, and on the vanguard. And I've been counterculture my whole entire career, it's just surprised nobody that I'm out here with a mask, It's like when it wasn't cool to have 2 or 3 pairs of sneakers, I had 2 or 3 pairs of sneakers, When it wasn't cool to do a crazy creative, never seen before dribble combo. Coaches were frowned on me. I was doing that, right? When it wasn't cool to have unsigned artists on the radio, in the 90s, me and Stretch were doing that. As a club DJ worldwide, like I've constantly been playing music that nobody knows. That's like I like pushing the envelope, and to me, doing an event that's mass required, right, with far UVC lamps and another and HEPA filters and all that stuff, like to me that's cool. For people to leave an event and not have to worry about, did I just get the flu, or did I just get COVID for the 10th time, or am I gonna suffer from long COVID? Like those are powerful sentiments, and I'm all about inclusion. I always have been, because I know what it's like to be excluded, right? My co-parent and I, like, we can't go to the supermarket. No one's masking. There's no HEPA filters. There's no open windows. There's no mitigation whatsoever. It's like just whatever, right? So we're limited in what we can do, because she's immunocompromised. But it's not just about her. Like, I'm 59, I'm about to be 60. When I turn 60, I become part of the group that's at most high risk for damage from airborne sickness. So, there's a lot of parts, and we have a child, 12 years old, beautiful, he's healthy. We want to keep him that way, So, there's a lot to it. There's a lot of layers to it. So many layers to it. And I just feel grateful for the opportunity.
Beautiful, perfect answer, and just so much richness has come out of that. Just my head is spinning thinking about it. So the first things that come to mind to me, hearing everything you just said, number one is just your vision, right? Being able to imagine a world that you want to be in, that's inclusive, that's that comes from your creativity. But then also, aside from that, like just integrity, right? So having the vision, but then also the integrity to follow through and actually create that world and stay true to your values, to what you believe in. That seems like a thread, like you mentioned, back from when you were at Columbia, in a Columbia radio room, creating a Stretch of Bobbito show, up towards, being in the park, right? Like leaving Wesleyan, being at the park and becoming famous as a baller outside of those common sort of institutions, those large institutions. Mm-hmm. Why are you like that? Like, what do you think is it about you that has created that sort of thread all your life, to have that vision, that integrity to build worlds, and also to stay sort of committed to that vision that you see about how the world can be and what it could look like?
I feel blessed to have been born in the 1960s, right? Boricua in New York, Nuyorican, and be able to witness all around me in the 60s, 70s, 80s, in my youth, because that's what shaped me. I wrote about that in my memoir, Bobbito's book of Bebo Bong Bong. I discussed, the foundation of my outlook on life in my autobiographical documentary, Rock Rubber 45s, as well. And essentially, I know what it's like to be excluded. Like, period. I have some privileges because of the way I look, but I'm not foreign to the racism and prejudice and xenophobia and ableism and all the isms, right? Like, I'm not foreign to that. Like, I roll with a diverse group of people, always have, right? Always have, from jump, whether it's been family members or once I started hitting the streets, and like my friends and the circles that I chose. I can't make everybody happy, right, with everything that I do, right? If I post about an event that I have coming up that's mass required, or if people see a IG reel where I'm at the park and I'm masked up, I'm going to get crazy negative backlash, to the point where I have to like block people or restrict them because they could just talk out of their face. There's anti-maskers out there. There's people who don't believe that, COVID is even real. We were led, the last administration in the United States, claimed independence from COVID.
The pandemic is over. If you notice, no one's wearing masks. Everybody seems to be in pretty good shape. And so I think it's changing, and I think this is a perfect example of it.
It's a disease. Like how do you say that it's over without a scientifically backed, qualified statement? And then Biden got COVID twice after that, right? Which might have contributed to his inability to think. There's brain fog as a result of long COVID. Maybe he has long COVID. I don't wish that upon anybody, but he kind of played himself, right? So back to the inclusivity deal. For me, it's always been about like just creating platform, right? So, I feel like mass required events where there's a ton of mitigation, right? And like-minded individuals who are thinking ahead, right? And not accepting the norms of what society wants us to, be brainwashed about. We're on the precipice of something special and something that can really grow and something that could be like mega influential in people's lives. And I like being a part of that.
Something you said earlier, that feeling of inclusion that you talked about, is people who are already on the same page with you, but then others who might not be, who are seeing you as an example. You're willing to share with them, teach them, also bring them into this space. What was the calculus there around, thinking through like, not everybody's going to be on the same page. Like, what do you say to those types of people that, might not be already there, might not be, already thinking about it, but then might be learning it from the first time from you or in other places, or just curious about, they've seen most people go down one path, you're going down another. What would make them think about following you down that other path?
From my experiences of doing mass required events at Blackbird in Kingston and Silent Air and Nyack so far, I have 3 underneath my belt. I could say that it's been a learning curve for, most of the attendees about wearing masks and why I do, and why they should consider doing so as well. I have yet to discover someone coming to my event and deciding, hey, I'm going to mask universally from now on, right? But that's up to them to decide until there's mask mandates again. But at least for that 2 hours, 3 hours that they're with me, they're being safe, and no one yet has come up to me and been like, yo, I'm really grateful for you, like opening my mind about masks, or why the community you're a part of wears it. That's fine. Now that said, right, members of the airborne sickness cautious community are like overjoyed, like, yo, you're doing an event, like we've been waiting for this. Yeah, I've been waiting for this, right? And so, I think for those people, it's really, really, really like bringing energy, life, reminders that we can get together, especially when you have the sentiment of isolation. You need community, especially like if you're suffering from long COVID, right? You need community care to heal, right? And so even for those who have not been able to attend, but just to know that is out there is like a reprieve, And I think with upcoming events that I'm doing with Positive Deviance, at Bronxlandia on March 15th, which lo and behold, is long COVID awareness day. Like how in the universe did that connect in such a beautiful way? It's lovely. I'm going to DJ for the first time in 5 years at Gabriella's on April 12th with Positive Deviance, and DJ Tara is going to be on the decks as well. All vinyl, all love, and I already know I might cry that day, because I miss it. I miss traveling. I miss being in a room with amazing speakers and seeing dancers interpret the rhythms that I'm putting forth on my needles. I dream about it. I have amazing memories of my career, but I took a break from it, right? Not just because it's an ongoing pandemic, but also because I'm a full-time caregiver and I'm needed at the house every single day throughout the day. So I can't just break out for 4 or 5 hours, 6 hours, like that. Like I have to plan it out and, have things, ready and backed up and really organized well to leave the house for that long to do a DJ set. But it's going to happen, and I can't wait. Can't wait. I've already started picking records. You see records behind me, right? Some of them are already selected. Like this is for April 12th at Gabriella's with Positive Deviance. I came up with this tagline, all vinyl, all love. And I feel like that should be the name of the party, for the next one that we do, because we are going to do more, right? It's just all vinyl, all love, right? Because that kind of like really screams the sentiment of what I'm about as a selector, what I believe in terms of sound quality. Vinyl is analog, which is way superior over digital sounds. It's not compressed. It's warmer, has more soul, right? And then, the all love is just like, that's what it's about. I love to play. I love my dance floor. I'll be dancing myself, I've been doing vinyl themed parties my whole career because I've only played vinyl. I never switched to CDJs. I never switched to Serato. I never switched to MP3s or waves. Like just always play vinyl. I had a party in the early 2000s at APT that was called Vinyl is Forever. And that was like the first party that I know of in New York or possibly the world that like tagged like this is vinyl. You're not going to get anything else in this room while you're here for the next 4 to 6 hours. You're going to get a warm, soulful, really expansive experience. I play a lot of different music from around the world, ranging in tempos and nuance. And I just request that people come with an open mind because you're not going to hear like commercial radio hits and stuff that you're going to sing along to. You're just going to be hit with like this sonic wave of like, oh my God, I don't know what's happening in my body right now. He's beckoning like my ancestral spirit, that's what I hope.
So one of the things, at least from going to parties, dancing, concerts, was one of the things that before the pandemic started that was one of the places I could like kind of lose myself and like not think about everything going on and really be present in the space. If you're thinking about getting sick, if you're thinking about what might happen afterwards, it's a little bit of a different environment. I see that sterile ray saber in the corner over there in that case. How are the precautions? How are we thinking about that in the space and how that being able to create this space where people aren't thinking about whether they're getting sick when they're going home after that, so they can really lose themselves in the moment and be present. Like, what does it mean to you to be able to provide the mass required space where people can focus and dance, people can just like sort of just feel what they feel in the moment without thinking about, worrying about getting sick? Like, what are all the precautions in place there going to do for that kind of, for that feel, for that environment?
The beauty of doing public events where mitigation is in place for all, right? But particularly the medically high risk community, or the members of the airborne sickness conscious community, is that you don't have to have this sort of like constant like wondering in your head, like, because we're so knowledgeable about what's going on, right? We research, we read uh, scientific studies and findings, and we follow certain handles that are providing information that are like, not what our public health officials are sharing with us, you know. Um, so we're sort of like counterculture to begin with, and because we have great concern about the effects of what long COVID can be to brain fog, to post-exertional malaise, um, to atrial fibrillation, to respiratory issues, to lack of rest, to it's like the COVID is a MF, you know. And then we have the unfortunate other side of that where there are people who die from it, you know. I have had family members and friends who have passed away from COVID, and it hurts. And I don't want to see that for myself, my son, or my co-parent. And I don't want to see it for others. And our government has left it up to individuals to decide how to be preventative or not. And being able to be an event producer where masks are required, and far UVC lamp is there to destroy pathogens within 1 second, and being able to communicate that with people is healing. When I did the first one at Salinir, like, I can't explain like how loved I felt to see people masking around me. Because I have friends and family members that won't do it. I tell them, like, yo, like, okay, you want to visit? Great. Like, we'll hang out outside, we'll mask up. Like, oh, I'm sorry. Like, I can't mask. I won't do it. I'm not asking you to like, wear a bozo nose on your face, with Groucho Marx glasses. Like, they won't do it. And I mean, no judgment on them, but it hurts. It hurts. When all I'm trying to do is be protective of my family and myself and them, and that's not to say that every single time people who aren't masked get together, they get sick. No, there's a great percentage of instances where no one gets sick. There's no exchange. Great. But we're talking about the possibility of it, and we're talking about mitigating that potential and being relieved by that. So when you live isolated from community and you're able to create community, it's powerful. And I need it. I need it for my own peace of mind. And I need it for the peace of mind of others who seek that as well. So
I feel the exact same way, and so much of this is about the future, right? And the future that we're building together, the communities that we're building together. So much is it about trust and feeling like somebody has your health, your future, your wellness in mind. And I'm so impressed by the work that you've been able to do outside of the culture, outside of with COVID Saver Families, and really being able to build communities of people who are like-minded or are really trying to build something, a future that is mindful, that's inclusive, that's thinking about, our health, right? Can you talk a little bit about what that means to you? Like because no one really know. You're not promoting that on Instagram. I mean, that's not something that people are talking about. But like the homeschooling, there's a whole like world that your whole world's had to shift around this virus, around like the thought of it, and it takes a lot, and there aren't a lot of people doing it, and it takes a lot of not just resources, but then also like I said before, integrity and vision. It's tough. Like, how are you keeping going? Like, what's your vision for the future? Like,
Our child, was at a public school prior to the pandemic, and then with his mother being immunocompromised, even back then, before even getting COVID, and then her getting COVID, and then eventually developing long COVID symptoms, you know, we couldn't imagine him in a classroom with 30 other kids where windows aren't open, there's no HEPA filters, so can't afford to bring sickness back into the home. And, that's for his mother, but also for him, And so we decided to start, we were doing the distance learning during the stay-at-home orders by the government. And then when those lifted and eventually the mask mandates listed, it was like a no-brainer to just, okay, we're going to keep them home. And we've been doing unschooling for like 4 years. Now we're doing a hybrid of like distance learning with the school as well as unschooling, at the same time. And, he's flourished. He's flourished. Like, you need a case study. Like, okay, let's look at this one. Like, like the kid is like, wow, smart, super happy, fulfilled by what he's learning, seeking his interests in the activities that he does. It's been wonderful to see all his milestones, up close and centered, because he's with me all day, So we have a commitment to that. And, should there be a school that opens one day that has far UVC lamps in every single classroom and, and open windows and air filtration and all that, like, and masks are required, or we would consider it, But for now, like, we're part of like a homeschooling group in Ulster and Dutchess County, Orange County as well. I mean, we live in Rockland. We wish that there were more families that are like-minded in our vicinity, because it's a drive. But, it is what it is. You make the effort as best possible to commune with others who are going to be safe and mindful. And, it's can't really think about any other way to do it right now, And then I don't know what the future holds. We'll tackle that as we get there.
So I guess I wanted to touch a little bit about the R. Melbourne appearance. We've covered a lot of it, like in the conversation that we've had so far. During that clip, which I know a lot of people really, really, really respected, and a lot of people took a lot from, you spoke to folks who say that the pandemic is over, and you made it very clear that we were in an ongoing pandemic. Why was it important for you to say that publicly? I'm not sure I've seen or heard someone like you take that stance that in a lot of ways is, again, countercultural, not exactly the lane that a lot of people have chosen so far. Like, why was that important for you to say then? And can you talk a little bit about any reactions you might have received from that, or what's been the sort of in the wake of you coming out publicly and making this part of your public identity, really saying like, this is who I am and this is what I stand for. Like, how has that felt, moving from that day until now?
So, I've been masking for 6 years now, right? And been part of this sort of like global cautious community that wants to prevent airborne sicknesses. I haven't led the charge in our household because my co-parent is immunocompromised and suffers from long COVID. So she does a lot of the research and I do a little bit of research on my own, right? But she shares with me links and posts, and we have conversations, and I've really learned so much from her, and I'm grateful for that, right? And so me being a public figure, I feel like I have a responsibility to use my platform to voice certain opinions. I've always been like that. When I was on the radio in the 90s, there was a protest for police brutality that the Congress for Puerto Rican Rights was organizing. And I would get on the mic during a break and be like, yo, this Saturday, come on out. We marching in the Bronx to protest the killing of Anthony Baez, whatever it was, right? So that's, again, like, people shouldn't be shocked by what I'm sort of revolving myself around, because that's been me. That's been a consistent character, dating back to the 80s, even before I was a public figure. Getting on the Ari Melber show on MS Now, I was given the choice of what to talk about. And I didn't, I could talk about the issues in Puerto Rico. There's a lot to talk about. Issues in the Congo, Palestine, Haiti, Hawaii, on and on and on. There's so much to discuss about what's wrong in the world, and I did that months ago, before we're in the current war with Iran, right? But, you only get so many seconds on national television to talk. And I felt like at that moment, it was like the right time to talk about the ongoing pandemic, because a lot of my friends will be like, yo, back in COVID, and it's sickening to hear, the ignorance. And I'm not calling my friends ignorant. And some of them are like super intelligent. Some of them are super intelligent. I'm not trying to say my friends are ignorant. Some of them are super intelligent, well-read, but they're just not up on what's going on, because it's not part of public health strategy for the most part, right? And so I correct a lot of my friends, like, yo, like, you saying back in COVID as if it's over. It's an ongoing pandemic. Check any website, scientific, CDC, whatever. It's still a pandemic. Biden declared independence, that COVID was over, but he's a human being, not a scientist, and not a doctor. Like, he's nothing, and he got COVID 2 times after that during his term, So yeah, I just, get a little frustrated having to, not correct my friends, but just open their minds, like, yo, like, and like, it's like they know of my situation, right? You're saying back in COVID as if I'm in the past, like I'm a relic, I'm still here. This is my daily reality, and it's your daily reality too. I have friends who say back in COVID who recently got COVID. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, what are you saying back in COVID? Back during COVID. So whatever. So that was that was heavy on my mind. And I just felt like I could use like the national news audience to hopefully open people's hearts and minds to the idea of masking and the importance of it, for whatever it's worth. I don't know how many people, decided that moment to start masking because of what I said. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a scientist, but I do know that a lot of people in the conscious community like flipped out. Yo, my inbox, my DMs, emails, comments. Yo, get out of here. Yo, oh my God, yo, like, you already loved you, but now I love you more. Like, like, whoa, So, and then there was people who had no idea who I was. No idea that I'm in the National Association of Broadcasters Radio Hall of Fame. No idea that, I did EA Sports and ESPN and Nike and, that I play pro ball, and no idea of nothing of that, nothing. They're just like, yo, this is a cool dude on national television saying that the pandemic is not over and that we should all be masking, when we're amongst each other to be safe. So, yeah, that was powerful. That was powerful. powerful moment. I'm glad I said it, you know.
You mentioned a few times, there are a few people who you either follow, the place where you get information. Like, how are you keeping up to date on information that's out there? Like, who are some accounts that maybe people, places people can follow to go to get more information? Anything like that, like where are you learning from? Like, what's the community, the informational community that's keeping you going there?
First and foremost, I got to shout out my co-parent, because as a Black woman who's immunocompromised and disabled, suffering from long COVID, like, yo, props to her. Yo, she does her diligence. She be having like 100 tabs open, you know what I'm saying? Like, overwhelming me with like, yo, like, read this and sending me posts and stuff. But, there's too many handles out there to shout out, People's CDC, J2 COVID, Clean Air Events, Clean Air Club in Chicago, Mass Together America. There's Matthew is something in Canada. Matthew is tired in Canada. There's the other dude with the funny accent with the big mustache. I forget his name. Paco. Yeah, Paco. There's a woman named Jessica that be saying a lot of stuff. But, I think ultimately long COVID answers is another good one. Long COVID is the answer, something like that. But, and you can't believe everything you see in an Instagram post. You can't, just take on everything that is shared by the CDC. There's government interest in there. So, it's like you got to weigh what you feel is trustworthy. And then, just like, I'm a historian. Somebody says, yo, I was the first person who did a spin dribble. Okay, cool. Like, you can claim that, but I need to hear it from other people that I trust as well, other trusted sources. It's just, that's how I was taught to write essays. You quote, you credit, you have to get multiple sources before you make a claim, and so that's how I feel about a lot of the information about airborne sicknesses. But there's also Crutches and Spice is incredible for being outspoken about disability justice. There's the doula, forgetting her name right now. She's always on Instagram masked up. She's a Black woman. Can't remember her name right now, but she does phenomenal like GoFundMe's for like different families suffering and whatnot. She's super activist. So yeah, I'm grateful that social media allows platform for people to voice their opinions in a way that could reach me, that they may not have otherwise. And for that, like, I'm informed as best possible. And yeah.
Bob, like, I'm so excited. I'm so excited to like meet next week and just like continue our conversations that could just like continue the relationship and building, because we have so much work to do. There's just so much for us to be able to put out. There's a void. The void is humongous. Yeah. And like I said before, like, we already know a lot of the answers, and it's really just about doing the legwork. And there's so many people out there who are on the same page, who just are in a similar position. They're either not sure that people are going to laugh at them when they come out and talk about this thing that everybody else is, going completely different path towards. And we're all on these other places in our own worlds. I feel like so much of the work of some of these events and just really bringing people together so that we can just like create the soup that is going to cause all these other things to happen, all these other sort of experiences, people to just like, already seen more Mass Required events. I've already seen more people, trying to, build stuff together. I'm just excited about where the future holds, because it can be just like depressing if you don't get yourself up out of the muck. So I'm just really glad that we're doing this. I'm really glad we got connected. That Instagram comment from way back when, I was like, yo, we have to just like say, what's up, Bob? Because that was me. I was like,
Oh, word.
I can't fucking believe that Bobbito Garcia is talking about wearing an N95s and is doing a mass required event. Like, I had to go I was talking to different venues who's like, give us the runaround around, oh, love the event. Sounds like a great lineup. The minute you mention a mask, they're like, oh, we'll get back to you. And, you know, we know there are ways to make all these spaces safer. And so it's just been a really, both frustrating, but then also just liberating experience to feel like we're actually making creating something in the world that does not exist. Yeah. That's like deeply necessary. People really do need these spaces. And so, yeah, I'm just glad that you're on the same page, that we're trying to make it happen.